Down.
Yeah, it feels very Australian Idol, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels very Australian Idol, doesn't it?
Good to go? All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Angus Scott, and these are my colleagues Tom Goldner and Harriet Tarbuck. Together, we are PhotoCollective. And tonight, I'd just like to start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathering here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and extend our respect to all elders past, present and emerging. So, Tom.
I think we're going to start by welcoming Ricky up.
Yep.
Ricky, if you'd like to... We've had so much clapping over the last week. It's, come up, you can have this spot, Ricky, prime spot.
Just do 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I'd just like to welcome everyone to Collins, where we're at tonight. We couldn't be happier to have PhotoCollective here. I was absolutely privileged to be invited to the committee this year and just to experience the judging and the way that you guys approach photography and approach the collaboration of everyone coming together with photography was really exceptional and heartwarming. So we couldn't be happier to have you on our campus. You know, helping our students and we really look forward to collaborating with you next year and years beyond. I think you guys offer something in Australia that no one else does offer and brings all photographers together, and it's better for photography and better for everyone that's involved. So yeah, I'm really, really happy for you to be here tonight.
Such nice words. Thank you so much, Ricky.
Thank you, Ricky. So a bit of a theme for tonight might be our difficulty in taking compliments a little bit. But yeah, just to follow that up, we're so pleased to be here today at ColArts and to form the relationship that we've formed with you guys this year is really, really exciting. And I guess what we're navigating today is at the end of our program that we've put on, which, I think is fair to say we're quite exhausted and elated, I would say is a good combination of things.
Absolutely.
But what we're really hoping to do here today is just really pull the curtain back for us to talk really candidly and to show you how candid we're speaking. There's absolutely no agenda for today, so these guys have got no idea where the conversation might go.
Yeah. I think we spoke about it for about 5 minutes before we came in here,
5
which
minutes.
isn't really our usual style, but
Yeah.
I think it's important for these conversations to be really open, and we work really hard at trying to be as honest as we can within our approach to what we do. And I think especially with award programs, it can be quite secretive, and people sort of seem to have an idea that the winners of awards are, it's all subjective, and, that people award their friends, and, they're these kind of things that go around when talking about award programs. And we just want to really try and be as honest as we can about our process and how we go about it. Yeah.
And I think the aim for today is to maybe take it in some spots that we would, not go so publicly
We can go
to.
deep.
Yeah, it's I guess it's our job to essentially put a bit of a brand forward and kind of present a fairly peachy exterior a lot of the time. And the reality is that there's 3 of us that are running this monster, and in many ways it's grown beyond us, and we're needing more help than ever.
Yeah.
Alongside giving some insight into things like the judging process and the ways in which entrants can be kind of improving their chances essentially at doing well. We also just want to create a space of honesty and to put it out there, and ultimately the direction of our organisation is dictated by what our entrants put in front of us, and the way the health of the industry, that dictates how our operation is going to run.
So we're really open to questions today, and you can. Julie's
we've got one
her
already?
hand up.
Let's go, Julie.
I'm just going to say that anyone online as well, we're going to try and navigate that as well. So if you have any questions, just feel free to jot them down, and Nick, our wonderful Nick will try and read them out to us if we can get to them. Julie?
So I'd love to know what the judging process is and how many judges you do have. Sorry, I'd love to know what the judging process is and how many judges you do have.
Yeah, so the judging process is a very, very long, drawn-out process, and I mean that in the best possible way. So it takes, I would say, around 5 weeks in total, roughly. So we have a preliminary round of judging, and then we have a main round. So the preliminary round is done by the PhotoCollective team, and we look at every single image that comes in through the entry system, and we look at them again and again. So it's a simple scoring system for the first round. It's a 1 to 5 basically. And once we've kind of done that first round of 1 to 5, we then make sure that we go through all those kind of lower numbers and lower scores to make sure nothing slipped through. We then go through the higher scores and sort of make sure that, yep, they're where they belong, or maybe we were a bit too keen for that one, let's bring it down a little bit. And then we go through sort of basically the middle range of 3s and start filtering back and forth. And that process, I would say we go through the whole lot probably 3 times. And then we probably end up with around, we had a 50 shortlist for each category this year. And I would say that sometimes we end up with 70, sometimes we end up with 40. And so you go back again and again. And by this point, it's sort of 3 or 4 weeks in, and we've all fallen in love with our photos. Yeah. And we're fighting for our babies. And, after lots of deliberation and conversation, we get to our top 50. And that's kind of round 1.
I think maybe, Gus, you can, talking about the external committee and how that's kind of changed. You weren't there for year 1, but you've been there for, the last?
So, I came onto the sort of APA team. It's hard not to say PhotoCollective team now, but PhotoCollective's sort of relatively new in the scheme of what APA is. When I first came onto the APA team, there was a lot of judges that were sort of coming back year after year in the first few years. And
We had all the same judges.
yeah, it was all
essentially.
the same. And so then it was probably, 2019 or 2020 even that we sort of made this decision that in order to be working with imagery which is as diverse as possible and like considering all the nuances of imagery, because it is like an inherently limiting thing, looking at photographs and trying to, decipher, various things about photographs, and it's really difficult to do from a narrow lens, and so we sort of made this decision to bring in a much more diverse round of judges and then actually change them up every year. So every year each category is being looked at and seen by a different external committee who are sort of coming from different backgrounds, that would be professionally, culturally, and looking at work in ways that we might not see it, and bringing things to light that we might not necessarily have seen in the first round. And that happens all the time. And that's, to be honest, like for me personally, like the most interesting thing about the process of operating an award is having people come in with coming from a really different place to you and pointing out these things about imagery that you might not have recognized initially, and sort of bringing like depth and layers and nuance to everything that you're looking at. It's really fantastic.
And even amongst the three of us, who you might think we all have a very a set vision or a vision that comes together, but we view imagery very differently. And by the end of
Yep.
yes,
The conversations, like towards the final part of like finalising the shortlist, the conversations can become so interesting, even just between the three of us as well. Yeah, interesting.
How can you not
Sometimes
see
a little
that?
bit heated.
yeah, and sometimes it's like you're so invested in a photograph that the other two are not seeing it, and I guess that's part of it. Is you have to become really great at. I think we've all become really great at looking at photographs and looking for the best within each work. And it doesn't matter, even the imagery that doesn't make it through the first round, we always try to bring that to a photograph. And I think you've got something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also as APA's progressed over the years, and as I suppose we've grown more confidence with what we're doing as well, we always say that we look for meaning and story above technicality in images. So I think in the first few years it was quite easy to kind of look at an image and say it's technically sound, the composition's right, it's exposed well, so therefore it goes through. Whereas now, for us, it's really about the nuance of what the image is trying to tell us and the story that we get from it and the emotion we get from it. So I think this is when it starts to become really exciting, seeing that diversity, but also where we maybe battle a bit more because, imagery will make me feel things that maybe these guys can't connect with as much, or vice versa.
I connect with everything.
Of course. So that's kind of, it starts to get really, I think it's really exciting, and it gets very passionate in that way because you're not just kind of looking at megapixels, you're looking at what the photographer's trying to convey.
Absolutely, and we have work that's sort of come through and become quite high up in our awards that we're really proud of this, that has the most incredible stories attached to it and the most incredible emotion buried within it, that it has been photographed on a phone in very bad lighting, and that's just because that's what that photographer's had there at a time. And it really speaks to photography as a means to communicate rather than necessarily something that's being done so just for this sort of aesthetic perfection or this sort of visual euphoria of it, but something that's being done as almost like a second language that all of us hold within ourselves, and then being able to present that to communicate really important moments in somebody's life or someone's existence and tell those important stories. And it's something that I think we feel that often may get overlooked in other sort of programs and things of that nature. So we're really proud of putting forward that work.
And I think, there's obviously a lot of awards that run, and something that we've learned over the years is you can't occupy all of the space. You're never going to be able to curate something that's going to please everybody, and the pure nature of running awards is something that I think we all struggle with a little bit. The fact that there has to be kind of like winners and people that aren't winning out of the process. And so, you know, it's been said before, and we really try to communicate this to, you know, everybody who enters our awards. It's not the be-all and end-all for your photography. Entering an award, and especially something like APA, where all we've got to work with is a single image and a short statement, if that's supplied. It's not going to encapsulate your story. It doesn't speak for your broader practice. It doesn't speak about the value of your work. It's one of many ways that photography can be recognised. And yeah, I think that's something that we've really kind of tried to drive home over the years as well.
Yeah, and I think what we always try and say as well is that just because you might not win the category or you might not be on the walls of an exhibition and a finalist, it doesn't mean we haven't seen your work. It doesn't mean we don't recognise you. It doesn't mean we haven't sat with those images and loved them. And I think it's so hard. The hardest thing for me, and I think for all of us about running awards, is that, you know, essentially people see a no when they haven't won or when they haven't kind of made it to that next level. And for us, it's not a no at all. It's in many cases, it's very much a yes. It's just, there's got to be kind of an order to things. And yeah, there's got to be a winner. And yeah, it really doesn't mean that your work's not recognised. And along with the main committee members as well, there's people, you know, the battles that go on there. I say battles in a nice way. I've used that a couple of times now, but I mean that in the nicest way possible, that people are just really passionate about the work they're seeing. And yeah, even if you haven't sort of won the category or become a finalist, it doesn't mean the work's not being recognised by your peers.
And, you know, all three of us as well, like we're all making artists. We're all people working with photography in very similar ways to everybody who enters our award, and we're also entering awards, and we're, you know, there are things that we are also personally going for that we're, you know, not getting. And so like we also, I think, come from a place of really understanding what that process is like from the other side.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like that, like, you know.
And it's a sting, like.
And it can really be a sting.
Even when we know so well that it's not a no, it's still a.
Absolutely. And so I think that's something as well, you know, organisations, especially organisations running large or like, you know, perceptually large programs, can sometimes feel somewhat a little bit faceless, but it's like we're artists, like we're doing all of the things that we are talking about and sort of operating, we are on the other side of as well. So we really don't treat any of it with this sort of sense of, you know, flippancy. Like it's really considered, and we know what we're doing when we make those decisions, and sometimes it can be really hard.
I want to backtrack because you gave I think, and I promise it wasn't rehearsed, but when you started talking about like what we're looking for, and you started, you know, talking about layer and meaning, and I think all of us sort of have our own kind of interpretation of that, and I think you put it really, really beautifully. And I'm wondering, like from your point of view, when you're looking at an image first time, it comes on the screen, you're seeing the statement. What is it that you're looking for that gets you excited, that makes you feel like this image is, you know, something that you want to really, you know, advocate for? And
yeah, so I mean, it's sort of different with every image, but one of the things that always grabs me immediately off the bat is when all of the words that accompany an image match the image. And that's not to say that I'm in preference of really long, lengthy captions, but I really, really appreciate when I see an image and it can take me by surprise a little bit. Like when I see something and I go, we all sort of formulate a version of an understanding about something very quickly from when we first look at it. And then when you read what's accompanying it and you go back to it, and immediately you're just finding so many more layers within it and so much story within it. And especially when those sort of layers and story feel like they're coming from a place that's very personal to the person who's made that work. And I start to feel like I can really identify with this person's whatever it is, whether it's like what they've gone through in life or their culture or their ideas, when I feel like I can identify that through their words and through their photograph, I feel like I'm getting to really know somebody. And we do feel like we really know people through this process. By the end of it, it's like, I've met people this weekend, because I'm often quite behind the scenes. And so when I meet people and I'm like, and as soon as they tell me who they are, I'm like, oh, I feel like I know you very well.
You've written their name like
I've
30
written your
times.
name so many times. I've looked at your photographs so many times, spent so much time with you, and you don't even know it. And so that for me is really that kind of like connection. Not in a weird way, but...
No, it's so true. It's so true, and I completely agree, Gussie. And like this last weekend, there's so many people that, you know, we met and face to face, and you just you go in for the full like, oh my God, you know, hugs and kisses, and you're like, oh, you don't even know me, and I'm just throwing myself at you because I feel like I'm connected to you.
Yeah, because we spend so much time with your words and with your photographs and with your story. So that's really the stuff that gets me super excited when we first go through that process.
I think like both of what you said absolutely resonates with me, and we do quite a lot of feedback these days, which is quite a complicated thing to do when you're running an award kind of to the size that we're doing. It's like you just do not have the capacity to give out actual constructive feedback to like, you know, people en masse like that. But we are finding more and more time to do that. And by far the piece of advice that I give everyone the most is it doesn't matter what your photograph is of or like what your statement is, but we're always looking for where you are within that photograph. And if that doesn't exist, if it's just a picture of something else or somebody else, it's honestly probably not going to go very far with us. Like it could be the most beautiful picture in the world, but unless we're getting that layer and really understanding like, why are you there? What are you saying with your photograph? For us, it's very hard to I think we're past the days of a camera being this thing that you know, has this like unbiased view on the world. It just we're too well informed to know that. And for a photograph to happen, there has to be intention, there has to be ideas behind that. So that's something that I really encourage anybody who's entering, you know, our awards to think about.
I just want to say something that I feel like I said a lot this year, but photographs don't exist in a vacuum. There is always something that happens before a photograph and what happens after the photograph. And for us, sometimes it's really important to know those things. So yeah.
Context.
Julie?
You go.
No, go.
That's really interesting. So just to clarify, sort of like, because I didn't realise the importance of having words with the picture, and so it plays a huge part on your guys' end in the whole image.
Yeah.
Well, we read every word. So, look, and this is the really complicated thing is we might sometimes get an image that doesn't have a great deal of language that's attached to it, but it's really effective. And I think about Lily Hatton's image from last year that won the portrait category, where there wasn't a lot of language associated with it, but it was so incredibly, like it sort of told us everything that we needed to know. But then there's so often where we get a photograph and, you know, we're kind of like, why haven't you given us that layer?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you meet the photographer, and I'm going to single out Nick Hinch here, who we're all like, we love his work. He's got on the publication that you guys have all got in your bag, he's got the front cover image, which is a beautiful black and white image of a house, and
It's like a spotlight.
spotlight, and we love the photograph, and we know that Nick isn't somebody who brings a lot of language to his photographs. And we all felt like it was a really strong image for the environmental category, but it didn't.
Was it documentary?
No, it was
environmental.
Environment. And it didn't quite rise to the top. And on Saturday, I was talking to him, and he was telling me this story about how this is the last shop that's in this town, and his I think it was grandparents you know, are buried there, and he's got all this linkage to this place.
And the way the sun was hitting
my
it
God.
is the time of the day, and it relates back to when he was there. It's just like...
And that's an example of when, you know, like...
Nobody told us that.
That language needs to come in to support that. We're looking for those layers. Like you can leave whatever breadcrumbs you want. Like it can be really descriptive, it can be poetic, it can be really abstract. But unless you're leaving something for us to get there.
And really, we've got thousands of images that we're looking through in the first few weeks of this, and anything that you can give us those different layers to make your work stand out, to make us feel something for it to go to the next level, then that's it's so important.
And if we're doing if we're going right into the statements chat, I would also like to say that also I think being careful not to over-explain your statements as well, because sometimes when you're tasked at looking at the thousands of images and reading all the words behind those images as well, and you get into statements which can become sort of like almost, it's like you don't need to write an essay explaining like every single detail behind it, but also giving no context to something as well. So it's about finding that balance that like inserts yourself within it, gives us a bit of context, but also like, leaving a little bit to the image as well if that's going to amplify your work. And I think it's really, I think everybody, and I've done this, and I think that everybody should do it at some point in their life, is attend a like short little course on personal writing, because it teaches you so much of like how to speak about yourself, which will teach you how to speak about your work.
That was actually kind of what I was going to ask about, because I know PhotoCollective do a lot of mentoring. So if like photographers are very visual usually, but not necessarily good with the written word. So does PhotoCollective have a mentoring thing to help entrants caption their work? And I'm assuming, well, I won't assume, I'll ask you, but if they're going to enter that year, would that be a problem for the entrant to then seek out captioning advice from the team for the same year?
Can I answer
Yeah,
that,
you
that
can,
one?
you can answer.
Thank you. So if
This is really
any
interesting.
advice that we would give, be it feedback or be it somebody booking into like a session with us, or like Harriet, I know you've run kind of like programs even outside this year, and we're all practitioners outside of this. And the advice that we're going to give is never actually about like the competition. It's always going to be about like, well, and it's very easy from the outside, right? So when we're talking about other people's practice, it's a different thing when analysing your own. But we're always going to try to put people on the path to realising why are they taking pictures, why is their story important, because everybody's got an important story to tell. And that's what's going to frame the best possible entry or put their work in the best possible light to make a book or, get their work in galleries. It all starts really with finding the meaning. There's been very little for me anyway in terms of like very direct advice about like how to structure a caption.
I think also just like ethically, we always start any mentoring session by saying, this is my personal opinion. I'm working with you directly as one person. This is not like there's other people on the judging committees for the awards that we run. This doesn't mean that this image is going to get through. It just means that I'm connecting with it. So we're try and be as open and clear as possible in that respect. And with regards to actual writing, I guess I love words. I love writing along with images. I love writing in photo books. I'm, very, very passionate about it. But I guess, I'm not a writer as such. I'm not a creative writer. I do a little bit of my own writing, but I don't know if I could teach people to write. But what I do teach, like try and connect with people about, is just writing from the heart and writing, don't overthink it, and just write words. And I often tell people who struggle with writing to just carry a little notebook with them, and if they like the sound of a word, just write it down. If they like a phrase, write it down. If they hear something that sounds funny, just write it down. And as soon as you start writing words, then they start to flow a little bit more, and you kind of get them out of your head, and then you put them down, and you can see how they might work well together. And so that's kind of the way I kind of teach writing if I was to teach it.
And the best caption writers.
And the best caption writers are the junior category.
like legitimately, and it sounds like a little bit of a, like we're just, we're not just being kind. Like the juniors have got this amazing knack at speaking kind of frankly to the point, but still
honestly,
just giving like this extra layer. I mean,
don't overthink it. They're not trying to make it smarter than it is. It just this is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what, as one of your judges this year, the ones that really cut through just go straight to truth. It's like, what is this photograph about? And what is the connection? Like you were saying, where is the photographer in the photograph? It's the ones that, we've got an example that, the photos come up on the monitor and we sit there and we spend some time with it. And then someone reads the caption and it's like, you look at the photograph and you go, oh my God, this is really powerful. It's really powerful work. And you're engaging with the work and you're engaging with that curiosity, like you don't know what it's about, you don't know. And then you get just, even if it's a short sentence of truth to go with that photograph, it really hits, home and gives it context.
Yeah.
And like you said, the verbose one, the trying to make it up, trying to make this photograph special with the words, it doesn't quite work. But when it's just earnest, and that's why your junior category, they're just going to tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah.
This is a photograph of my mum, with my baby brother. It's like, and this is, like the photograph that I was most impressed with the entire awards was the 7-year-old that won, and her caption was just, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and it was just purely her experience in lockdown with her mum, and I'm going to get emotional now.
But then you look at like Araya's caption, which was like really almost like
the
a polar opposite.
category winner.
Which was like, it was really lengthy as, from a starting point, which we just said that we don't often, we don't appreciate it sometimes when it's...
She'd written a poem, so it was a poem, and then she described the image as well.
Yeah.
So that it was lengthy, but it was kind of all...
It got there,
It
complemented the photograph, and so it's always that. I think this is why it's so hard for us to give that kind of really direct feedback on like how to write a caption, because what we're looking for is to be surprised, and we're not looking to see what we've seen before. And the key to that is people tapping into like, what's true to them. And I mean, you can't teach that. You can see that in other people really easily, and you can encourage that. But in terms of like unlocking that, it's kind of up to the entrance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to say the other thing that we had finalists that we were judging with no captions. So, like you said, it's a bit of a dark art.
I mean, the animal category winner this year, it just had, so it's a beautiful picture of a Tasmanian devil in the snow, and it was kind of holding onto a tree, and the title was hanging in there, and then the caption was just Tasmanian devil, but those few short words just created so much context and so many levels of like this vulnerable animal, caught in the snow and in the wild, and the way the photo was kind of, the animal was gripping a tree, and then it's just hanging in there and it's endangered. So, sometimes all you need is a few words, and it just brings all those levels out already. So it is, I mean, we're telling you, write captions, you don't need to, just use a few words, write an essay, so it's really hard. But I think at the end of the day, you do what is, feels inherently right to you, and but just don't be afraid to add context to your image. Yes, a picture tells 1,000 words, but it doesn't just have to be the picture.
Yeah.
And that's it? No, that's not it. Something we've talked about a lot over the years is like captions being compulsory, and it's something we brought into the documentary category. And I had a really interesting conversation with a fellow the other night. We are people who don't really like rules particularly, but we're kind of like, you have to have, rules to run something like this. But like, we love people that are challenging us, to go, well, this is this is what could exist within this category. Or
We're not oracles. We don't know. Like, we've done this for a few years and we think we're getting a good grip on it, but every year we change it up. Like, we are open to discussion about it. We're not rigid in what we're doing here.
Absolutely.
And I guess, whether captions become a compulsory thing or not, it's a really interesting discussion, and something that we've talked a lot about through Australian Photography Awards being a single image award. And we have people who come and judge with us who I would say really specialise in series-based work, in creating photo essays and like long-form narrative. And they can really struggle with the fact that it's a single image and they've got to create their own, they've got to judge for themselves what that context is. Yeah. And we understand that there's limitations to that, and there's challenges to that, but also like kind of realising the limitations of photography is something that we talk about a lot, because a single photo, everyone says a photograph is worth 1,000 words. But a photograph is never going to be able to give you the full complexity of a place, a situation, a person, be that yourself or the people that you're photographing. It gives us a window in, maybe. It might allow us to think and kind of depart, but it's never going to be fully resolved. And actually kind of realising that photography has those limitations, I think there's actually strength in that. And that's where the strength of the single image, I think, can lie. And that's where the strength of the caption can lie as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that especially when thinking about like the limitations of single image photography, and because we also obviously run Stories, which is a series-based award, and I would say that definitely for myself, but probably speaking for both of you as well, that we're, as personal practitioners, probably more working with series-based work. But within those limitations of a single image, there's also so much strength that can actually come out of that limitation as well. And people almost being forced to take a single photograph and like package up with inside of that all of these ideas and all of this feeling and emotion and sort of like life experience and history, and trying to put it forward in a single photograph and some words, is that it's almost like a bit of a pressure cooker. And when people get it right, like they get it right, and it can just be, it just blows your socks off. You can just look at something, and we revisit work constantly again and again and again. Can I talk about the chicken? I have a photograph by Caitlin Slyer. It was actually entered into Stories, which is a series-based award, but it was a single image within it that has just been like a photograph that has stayed with me for a few years now. And I talk about it all the time. And within this...
Every time we have to promote anything, Gussie's like, can I use a chicken?
Yeah, it's of these young boys in a yard on the south coast
as well, I'm pretty sure.
Tom raises chickens in case you didn't notice.
Poultry.
But it's on the south coast of New South Wales, and it's these boys, and they're holding this rooster, and everything just from like the subtleties of their haircut through to the way that they're holding the rooster, to the way they're engaging with each other, to the landscape around them. It's got so much depth and so much story to it, and I come back to it all the time. For me, just as this kind of something that sums up like a really, really, really large part of our country and our culture, that really sits with me. And there's layers of masculinity, and like there's layers of adolescence and all this sort of stuff. And so when it works, it just really works. And I think that there's such a strength to leaning into that limitation and saying like, I know that this isn't necessarily going to say everything that I want to say in my work in this single image. So let's find what I can say and let's do it really well.
Good. I'd like to take it to maybe a little bit more kind of like touchy, more kind of stuff that you don't actually, not physically touching, just more like, touchy, like maybe a bit delicate. And stuff that I guess like we've had to kind of realise is part of our responsibility as facilitators for awards like this, and that is, we get imagery from all sorts of genres, all sorts of backgrounds, and we have imagery that broaches really sensitive topics, and sometimes it's really beautiful photography, but it could be lacking context. The context that's given could actually be damaging to the photograph. And this is something that's so hard to, I think, like find the space to communicate about this. So I just want to pass over the comments to you guys. Maybe without getting too specific, but...
I think it's really, I guess as we've moved on throughout the awards and PhotoCollective and what we're trying to do, I guess, you know, there's a lot of work that comes through that is, you know, we question the ethics of it perhaps, and we're trying to look deeper into how the photographer's working alongside just if it's a great image. And I think for the most part, when it comes to the award programs, a lot of that, if there are questions around ethics and if there are questions around representation and who's taking the photo and what they're taking a photo of or who they're taking a photo of, quite often we take that to the main judging. 9 times out of 10 we'll be taking that to the main judging team because we feel like it's a conversation for the main judges. But there is a line there where, you know, we as an organisation have to back what we're putting out and the photographers that we're representing, and that's a really it's a really hard line to kind of toe. That you know, is this ethically? Do we believe in the ethics around how this photo was taken and who it's being taken of?
Or even, you know, so what it's being taken of. Like something that came up a little bit on Tuesday night's talk with Michaela Skovanova and Danny Sprague, is this idea around even just the ways that people work with environmental photography. And, you know, we're not ecologists, like we're not scientists, and we can see an image and think like that's a great image and it's a great story and put it forward, and then have somebody say to us, well, like that's actually a harmful image because of the way that, say, a drone might be interacting with an animal or something of that nature that, like, we're not picking up on necessarily, or flash or something of that nature because
or imagery that might be set up as well.
Yeah,
like
or imagery that might be set up, and like you know, we can do the best that we can, but we're also, especially crossing so many genres and boundaries, and we're always learning and we're always actively learning. But, you know, we're not scientists, we're not sociologists, we're not people who are trying to claim to have this kind of like overarching, infallible ethical framework to everything that we're doing. And so it's just another reason why having external committee and having people around us who can bring their knowledge and expertise.
Particular area.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, something that we really try to keep in mind when, you know, looking at the ethics of photography is the realisation that, you know, you look back on, like I can talk about my own practice and look back at what I was doing 10 years ago or even 5 years ago and go, well, actually, you know, there's parts of that that I feel differently about. And, you know, the ethics of photography is, well, not just in photography, but it's a fluid thing. We're continuing to learn. We're never going to have a full grasp on it because, like, I mean, you can't, the second that you think that you're understanding it as a black or white situation, you're kind of missing the point, I think. So we try to, I think what you said was really great about, you know, we seek outside opinion when we're unsure with it. And this is just another reason why we really take the time. Something that we actively would work against, I guess, is it probably applies more so than anything to like the portrait or the people category and the documentary category.
Yeah.
And that's where if we get the sense that there's any kind of exploitation that's going on, this kind of sense of otherness as well. And there was some imagery this year. There was, I'm not going to get too specific, but there was one photograph that was maybe it was genuinely maybe my favourite image in the whole year. Like it was that incredible, and it couldn't go through because of the position in which that photograph was framed, which is so hard to, you know.
Yeah, it's a really, and that's when actually the captions can hinder things as well, because I think I know the photo you're talking about, and it was very, very beautiful, and the words that accompanied it were not.
But maybe into another award for one. It might have been completely fine. Maybe 5 years ago we might have viewed that very differently as well.
I'm sure we would have, I think,
Yeah.
a few years ago. But, times change, and the longer we go on this journey, the more absorbed we are in photography and talking about photography and hearing from other photographers and working with people through our committee and through the magazines. And we sort of take on that knowledge, I guess, and take on those ethics as well. And they're decisions we have to make, which are really hard.
And the limitation, going back to what we were talking about before, the limitation in that is that photographers can explore more collaborative frameworks in the way that they're making pictures, and that caption then becomes a really beautiful tool for that. And Ilse, I can see you've just come in, and your entries this year were actually I think an amazing example of providing that context of giving us those breadcrumbs of what your relationship is with the person that you're making this picture with, so we can kind of understand that it's not it's not this kind of transactional experience. The person in the photograph still holds
it's collaborating.
Collaborative. There's agency there.
Yeah.
It's never resolved though, because how can it be? There's limitations, but understanding that limitation provides opportunity, I think.
Absolutely. And it's something that I remember speaking to Tobias Titz, who was one of the people category committee members this year, after going through that process, and we had this sort of conversation about it. And he said the thing that stuck out to him some of the most was how much agency everybody in each photograph really seemed to have over that work being made. And that is just, for us, that is so important, that the people within the photographs, especially within that category, in the documentary category, are enthusiastically consenting and collaborating in the making of that image. And that's just a really, really important aspect of our conversations these days.
I got more things. Does anyone have a question before I start harping on about? No? Okay. I'm really keen to chat, I guess, another aspect of what we do where, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but I can see how it's a challenge, ongoing challenge for us, is we've got people who are entering various awards year after year who are doing incredibly well. I mean, out of the winners this year for APA, there's people that have done well through our platform before, and it remains a challenge for us that it doesn't become an insular space. We're looking at you, Amy, who one of many who's just producing incredible work, and and winning programs that we're running, and entering work, and which is within the rules of doing so.
Absolutely.
And for us, it's become this space of we can't penalise somebody for being fantastic, but we're also I think the second that we're not finding new people, something's not quite clicking.
Yes.
And there's some easy, the easy thing that we're doing is, I wouldn't say easy, but people who are partaking in our awards are invited to kind of join us on the other side and become committee. That's kind of one aspect of doing it, but it's an ongoing challenge.
It's a real challenge, and the last thing we want is to, just be awarding the same people over and over. But yes, there's just some photographers out there that are really prolific, and they're just making work all the time. And this is a real platform for them to show their work, and they're doing really well. And this is another reason why we have external committee. It's not our decision; it's an external committee's decision. But when those images rise to the top of external committees as well, then we back them. We back the results of those, and it is a challenging space to be in. But I think yeah, we can't, unless, I mean, I don't know if there's maybe we stop people entering once they've won for a couple of years or something. I don't know if that would be a good situation, but yeah, it's an interesting space.
If anybody has any pointers
Yeah.
on how to deal with this.
Vicky?
My perspective is the process is the goal and the goal is the process. So for me as an entrant, the goal isn't actually the process of extending myself as a photographer and delving into new realms. So I don't. It's not about the winning. And I don't think we should put so much emphasis on the winning, but just the embracing of the process and the osmosis of just the exchange of evolving and learning and getting better with what we do, or not better, but just exploring new realms. And I mentioned that before. It's like, for me personally, this is a competition that is very new to what I do as a photographer, and I really am excited about the kind of freedom I now have, because I felt like I was wearing this creative girdle, if I can use that word, when I was entering some other competitions, where it was so dictated by rules and regulations, it was suffocating. And I hadn't realised how suffocating it was until I took the breath of fresh air of entering the APA. Like, it really is just so liberating for me to know that I can express and be free and just really enjoy exploring my work. And
I think I'm going to be quite honest here, but I think, Vicky, your work for us this year is a real example of, I guess, seeing our messaging perhaps work. And we were so excited to see what you presented to us this year, because we have seen your work over the previous years and we love it, and it's beautiful, it's very technical, and it's a lot of composite work, and it's incredible. It's not necessarily what we're drawn to through APA, but the work you entered this year, we could really see you
it's
showing
resonating.
us,
Yeah,
you
I'm
showing us a different
evolving
side.
now from the journey, which has only been a couple of years really being involved in this.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, for me, that's why I say that's the gold, especially, is just going, okay, I can fly a little bit more now, and my wings can expand, and and so it'd be great to, obviously have a win, but it's okay as well, because I'm learning, and that value of learning extends to my students, and that's really important to show them that.
Yeah.
That, hey, it's not just about the winning, but it's all about the journey.
Yeah.
And that journey never stops as long as your heart's in it and you're passionate and you're always extending yourself, then hey, that's the win.
Yeah, and it's just to say again, that was really exciting for us to see that work you presented. And, it just goes to show that you can also, there's different work that's going to do well in different competitions, and this is just our competition. But yeah, just seeing that work that you gave us of your daughters, and that beautiful picture of, I think it's your daughter on the horse as well, that actually didn't get... it really made us really happy to see that, and to know that we're kind of reaching out to community like that and to you like that.
So I want to talk a little about the idea of anonymous judging, which when we started 7 years ago, was really important. We're like, every photograph has to be viewed. We don't know who's taken the photo. There's no name next to it. And it was, I guess it's taken us, we really looked for approval, I think, when we first started, to make sure we were doing things ethically and, right by the people that had been doing it before us.
Yeah.
And over the years, we've kind of realised that we need to kind of take it on ourselves. And something that we started to notice more and more in the last few years was us pretending that we weren't recognising somebody's work, especially when, sometimes you just know, you might have seen it in other awards, we might have seen it submitted in other things that we've run. Some people's work is unmistakable as well. And we kind of reached this point where, I'd say for better or for worse, we started to acknowledge that. And I think as well that it was actually quite an important step for us. And it remains a complicated thing going forward, especially when you end up with imagery that might become kind of neck to neck, where like everyone in the room might know that person's practice, you might know that image. The other one that's contending with it, we might not have any context beyond the photograph.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that, Harriet?
Well, I think now, as we've moved forward and grown confidence, and if there was a situation where you have two images that are sitting at the top and you're trying to decide the winner and you do know one and you know one's practice, we would perhaps look up the other one and research a little bit and put that photo into context more, because the decision to, pick the winner, it's too important to rely to chance, I think. And it's I don't,
And it goes the other way, because the image that is recognisable can be discriminated against as well because of that exact reason.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's people that might not sit, perfectly with everybody, but
Also in the stages before, just when you get to that winning stage, I think for us as well, there were a couple of years sort of earlier on or in the middle there where we were, not looking at the names and just picking the winners, the shortlist. And, there was there'd be quite a lot of photos by one photographer within the shortlist. And
Amy.
Amy, Ilsa. And I think as time goes on, what we want to do with Australian Photography Awards and with PhotoCollective is show a diverse range of what Australian photographers are making. And if we're picking 6 images from one photographer, 4 images from another, 2 images from another, there comes a certain point where there's room for more photographers to be showcased. And I think for us, the annuals and the shortlists are a gallery and a documentation of what Australian photographers are making that year. And in future years, I would like to look back on that and say that was 40 or 35, 40, 45 photographers within that shortlist that is really representing the year that was, not 15 photographers because they were the best photos that we saw. So I think there's a balance there. You definitely, of course, you're not wanting to penalise anyone by not having their photos in there. You're wanting to make sure that gallery is looking the best it can, but there is room for more photographers and to give other people breathing space.
It's living up to, we talk a lot about inclusivity. And it's living up to that, isn't it? It's making sure that, because when doing something like this, you do need to have a finite number of photographs you're putting forward and of photographers you're putting forward. And at the end of the day, that inclusivity is so important for, I think, making the community feel like they can enter our awards and take part in our awards, and that their work, just because we might not know them and they might not be from the same circles or areas as we are or whatever, that they're not going to get overlooked, because we do spend so much time thinking about all these little nuances and probably driving ourselves a little bit nuts with it. But it's just so important to make space for as many voices as we possibly can to keep that diversity strong.
I think this year, more than any other year in our operation, we've done that as well through committee. Like, they've been so not just involved in, doing their part in, judging. It's a word I really still it's not the right word for us.
Consideration.
Consideration, it sounds so weird. But, they were not just involved in that process, but they were involved in talks, they were involved in, making the publications, they were involved in the presentation of things. And I think for us to create something that stays relevant and stays at the forefront of what is happening in photography, it requires a level of surrender and kind of handing the keys over in a way, because we're going to be past it. Like it won't be too long, and we're going to need the next generation to I mean, there's going to be things that we think we understand that we're going to be limited about.
Yeah.
And I think this year that was something that was incredibly exciting and really promising for the future of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think this year more and more for Tom and myself, it's not. Yeah, we don't want to be the face of PhotoCollective. We want to just, we're running it and we're facilitating it, but PhotoCollective is so much more than just us running it. And, just bringing Gussie up into the forefront more and more is really important for us, bringing up panellists, bringing up people that are having conversations as part of Australian photography. That's what's important, having committee members handing out the prizes. It's not really about us. It's about, Australia, the greater community coming together through it.
I'd love to talk a little. How are we going?
We're okay. We started late, so we've been going about an hour.
Okay.
But we are approaching 7:30.
Well, this is sort of towards the back end, but I guess the future of next year and beyond. I think being really honest. How honest can I go here? It's been...
We're exhausted.
We're absolutely spent. I mean, it's three of us on a daily basis sort of pulling this together.
We're just burnt out a little bit. It takes a lot of organising and energy and a lot of creativity and a lot of kind of trying to keep up a little bit.
So thick skin too.
It's been... Yeah, don't get me wrong. It's amazing, and we work really, really well together. I said to Tom the other day, I don't know what stars were aligned when we met, but we just connected, and somehow our personalities they gel together, and we could create this. And Gussie coming on board is just, the three of us. We just have different skills, and they just work well together, and we work really, really hard. And I've known that all year, but I really realised that after last weekend, that we worked really hard to put that on, and it went really well. But I say that because it was a lot of work, and we do work hard. But we're proud of it, and we are so happy to do it. But things...
And the sustainability of it is another thing, because we know we can't deliver last year. This year we ran 3 awards, which is just mental. Like, we don't need to
won't do again.
It's never gonna happen like that. Like, that was a multitude of factors, I would say. Like, I think this year we had to in some ways really stick our neck out to show how how we can deliver programs, and it was
after the last couple of years and everyone being in lockdown, and everyone wanted to be out, and we wanted to kind of get back out there again, and we wanted to deliver that, and I think we did, but now we can pare it back a bit.
We can pare it back
just a little bit,
but I mean, purely how this thing functions, the nuts and bolts of it. Essentially, we're a business. That's how this thing runs. The business runs really on 2 fronts. We've got our community that are entering our awards, that are subscribing or buying our magazines, and then we've got our community, our industry partners who see merit in what we're doing and want to support this kind of space. They're both equally important. Over the last few years, we've seen a shift in that. And speaking really honestly, in terms of entries, we're quite far down from a few years ago. Which is something that we never vocalised. But it kind of requires. It's been a non-stop adjustment since we launched. It's been a non-stop kind of. evolution of us trying to do the best thing by the people who are, you know, spending money with us and believing in what we're
Supporting us.
doing.
Yeah.
And I think next year we've got, you know, we've got some new prospects for funding as well. Like hopefully, you know, some new partners coming on board and finally moving down that road of, you know, maybe getting some funding from council and things of that nature. What have you got to say about that, Harriet?
It's, I mean, I think you've said it all. It's an ever-changing process, and I think, you know, in 2020 we hit record numbers of people entering APA, and APA funds everything else we do. So it's really the backbone of the whole of PhotoCollective, and you know, we had record numbers in 2020, and since we started, we increased numbers every year, and then the last 2 years of that's changed. So. It's an ever-shifting beast, and we will continue to try and make it work to the best of our abilities, and we can't do that, you know, alone. And people like Nikon Australia, brands like Nikon Australia, KL, PhotoPlay, Canson, Infinity, these guys came on as major sponsors this year, and without them, we wouldn't have been able to do any of the, you know, half the work that we've done. So there's a real balance there, and, you know, working with these guys is just incredible as well. They're all, it's not like working how I envision sponsorship to be. It's not a transactional thing. These are real people behind these beautiful brands, and we work really closely with them. Julie's sitting here tonight, and you know, Micah from KL's been here. The others have been here all weekend with us, and that's what actually makes it so exciting moving forward with them, that we're hanging out and having a glass of wine and talking about what we can all do better for this industry. So look, everything changes every year for us, it seems, and next year will be different as well. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes.
I think a big, I wouldn't say a hole in what we're doing, but an area that could use a lot of growth is, you know, we're based in Melbourne. Our network kind of starts here. We do have people who engage in our programs all around
Across
the country
Australia,
and abroad, you know,
Australian
as well.
people abroad, yeah.
And I think in the last few years, we've seen institutions like Collarts, you know, get behind what we're doing, and we're going to need to see that happen on a national stage for us to be continuing to grow and for us to be around longer
and it's
term.
so hard because we're so busy that we're working day to day, and we're trying to just make all these, you know, we're kind of, we're working on APA, we're working on stories, we're working on PhotoCollective and the magazines, and it's really hard for the three of us to find time to, you know, build some foundations, we'll market across Australia and reach out to institutions. And so that's something that we're really hoping next year to kind of, you know, perhaps employ people to work with us to be able to kind of do more organic kind of talking to different areas of the industry that we're not able to, that we don't have the time for at the moment, but hopefully will soon.
We have a lot to give to a relationship like that. You know, I think that we continually try to reach out to various institutions. You know, we'd be available to you know, to talk to students, to tell people about the programs that we're running. But it has felt like a real uphill battle, and I think that's something that we really need to double down on for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe with some help.
Does anyone have any questions? We got pretty honest there, I think.
Do you guys think you organise little exhibitions between? There we go. Cheers. Do you guys think you might organise more little wee events kind of between your two main events annually, and also is Stories kind of a similar size to the annual main one?
So Stories is a bit smaller, so we did this incredible event actually here at Collarts, and because of the nature of Stories and the multiple images and the descriptions that went with it, we actually did a cinematic experience. So we had a big projection screen here, and we filled this room, and we had lovely food and drinks, and it was really beautiful, and it was very different to what we did last weekend. And Collarts were amazing at helping us facilitate that. Next year, I'm not sure. There's been some very, very initial stages. We're thinking, there's a potential that we might just run APA next year. Am I talking too much?
No, I think that's fine to
Is
say.
it potential that we might just run APA next year? I think maybe in the build up to that, there'll be talks that might happen. This week has been amazing. We've had 6 or 8 talks happening in the next week, and I think we might have burnt people out a little bit because getting people to keep coming out. So maybe we'll do some bit more sporadically throughout the year, and all leading to kind of we've got the photos, we can travel it. We've talked to our lovely friends, the PhotoCollective in the Gold Coast, so we might end up there. Our friends Contact Sheet in Sydney, so we might end up there. But these are all kind of like we have a lot of ideas. So there's some ideas. I think also with something like stories, to run it every year, I'm not sure how many photographers are making long-term work that can sustain that. And so actually potentially having a few years off, and then it doesn't mean that we won't do it again. We love it. It's our little heart stories. But maybe having a couple of years off and coming back will just bring that pool of beautiful storytelling even more prolific. Yeah.
Heart stories.
There are hard. We love stories. It's really,
it is really nice.
But
we might have, I like a bit oversaturated. We've put a hell of a lot on this year.
Yeah.
It needs to make sense, for us to deliver that. But we also, the reason why we moved away from, just being identified as Australian Photography Awards was because we knew that the work that we wanted to do in photography wasn't limited to that. We want to create opportunity on an ongoing, it needs to be ongoing, it needs to be regular. We don't want to just be this thing that happens in November. We want to be something that's bringing people together and creating important conversations on a more regular basis.
And also opportunities as well, because all throughout the year, through our magazines and through various other sort of platforms that we run, we're also commissioning work as well. So it's also just like spreading opportunities around to different artists and giving people the opportunity to actually get paid for art, which in Australia is a really, really difficult thing to do. So it's so important as well to be able to continue the space to continue on those sort of collaborations and stuff like that as we go as well.
And I think, that's probably, it takes us to a really great finishing point, which is that, none of this exists without a healthy ecosystem within the arts sector, and that extends not just to what we're doing, that extends to the institutions, it extends to... okay. No worries. Yep. Help me, Gus. Thank you. That was awkward. It extends, across all corners of the industry, and we've really tried to live and breathe that. So, anyone who partakes in our programs, be it, being a committee member, being a speaker at one of our events, be it working at one of our events, we make sure people are paid. And that's something that's kind of, it's a double-edged sword, because it's, of course, that's a really healthy thing for, making the industry better, but it's also put us in a position where maybe we haven't been able to expand or, quite put those roots down as much as we would have liked. We stand by it because, we, at the end of the day, we're advocating for photographers. That's what we're doing here. But something needs to give as well, and we still have a way to go to be here really long term, which is what our plan is.
Yeah.
So I know, personally speaking, I would put my hand up to say I would love to give to a community that I'm passionate about, and I'm sure many other people would as well.
It's a really hard line for us to toe, and at the end of the day, your time is valuable. You know, like we see that, and if you were to come and you know, like assist, you know, with what the direction of what we're doing, we would expect you to be compensated for that in the same way that we're wanting to be compensated for that ourselves as well. More and more we are taking on extra hands, and the last week and what we put together with you know, all the talks, the exhibition, that would not have been possible without like the help of, you know, like Josh over here and all the people that have been involved. And there's so many people that are asking for that. Like what other industry is calling for volunteers all the time? And what we're doing is valuable. It's important. People should be getting paid for it. So I don't know. We need the help, but we also think that we need to kind of try to champion that change in the industry. And that's where, you know, that's where entry fees are going. That's where when we've had criticism over the years about like how competitions run with taking, you know, prizes from corporates. It's like, you know, you get these cameras from Nikon and then you just give them away and charge a fee. And it's like...
Get rich quick, Tom.
Yeah. We don't get much of that these days, but, you know, we navigated a lot of those really, you know, pretty hard-hitting questions. And, you know, of course, people don't really know what it's like behind the scenes and how small it is. But for this thing to last long-term, people need to be getting looked after and be getting paid for it. And we don't know what the answer is to that. It probably falls somewhere in between building a business where people want to contribute in terms of, you know, entering awards, in terms of building great relationships like we're doing with companies like Nikon, and also having council like just actually look at what we're doing and get behind it. And that's not from lack of effort. I won't go into that. And that's something that's on the agenda for next year because we need to keep trying that. But it needs to... For this thing to be sustainable, we still have a lot of work to do. Yeah. That said, we're not going anywhere either.
We're not going anywhere.
No.
Thank you all so much for coming out today and listening to us babble on. Thanks to everyone at home and anyone listening for all your support over the last weekend and with everything we do at PhotoCollective and APA. Thank you to all the amazing sponsors for being a part of it. And in the next couple of weeks, once we've tied everything up, we're going to have a good old rest. And then we've
got some feedbacks.
We've got some feedbacks. We've got some annual reports to write. And then we're going to have a good old sleep. And then we'll be back next year to look at more photography.
Yeah.
Hopefully smarter. And just one final massive thank you again to Colarts for having us here this evening.
Yeah.